Hello. Okay, so on to our final session of the day. We're going to finish with some inspiration from the Food Shift 2030 project. Welcome to this session. I'm shortly going to introduce you to Karin Beukel, who's co-founder of the Circular Food Technology, who are one of the 30 partners that make up the Food Shift 2030 multi-stakeholder consortium. Now, Food Shift 2030 is putting citizens at the centre of food systems change in a novel approach to scale up, multiply and share best food innovations that European communities have to offer. Once again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat or put your hand up in the room. Without further ado, over to you, Karin.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the introduction. Yes, so I want to be sure that you can see the screen. Yes, perfect. So yeah, hi, I'm Karin, and I'm also one of the partners in the Food Shift project. And what I will present to you today is the company Karin, which I'm a co-founder of. So in the here we go. So the food system, the current food system as we see it, is that it's broken. More than 1/3 of all food is produced is never consumed. We have millions of people suffering from hunger, and we see malnutrition, both in terms of obesity, but also in terms of stunting. And we do overconsume our planet 1x7 every year. And 22% of all global CO2 emissions comes from the food sector. So we really believe that bold change is needed. We believe that the next global food trend will be upcycled food. And the reason why we believe this is that we see a trend towards a circular food system where we reuse all the resources in the food system in a manner where nothing is wasted. So, and actually already we see that it's a huge and very fast growing market. So right now we see it's a $47 billion US dollars market in the US. And we also see the European market is growing on this trend. The consumers, they want it. We see that more than 57% of consumers, they want to purchase these sustainable food products in the future. But what is it that we do in Karin that's different? So we upcycle spent grains, and spent grains is the leftovers from beer production and whiskey production, and there's actually more than 40 million tons globally each year. But for every ton of spent grain that we have, we can actually produce 200 kilos of really nice super tanker flours that has high levels of protein and high levels of dietary fiber, and then also 400 to 500 liters of enriched liquid. Actually, if we used all the spent grains leftovers that are available globally, we could cover 10% of the calorie deficit that we're facing in 2027, estimated by WHO. So it's really a potential food resource that we need to dig into. What do we do with the spent grains? First of all, we turn them into flour. So as you see here on the slide, you see that we have a very versatile ingredient. We have different aroma components, and the aroma components originate the beer it comes from. So we have a Pilsner flour, we have an IPA flour, we have a stout flour, and also a whiskey flour. And all of them has different flavors that goes into different types of food. Then we've also launched ready-to-eat products to show the food industry that this flour, even though it's high on protein and very high on dietary fiber, it's really good for different types of products. So, for example, crisp, granola, crackers, etc., etc. And then finally, within next year, we will also launch our liquid part of our product portfolio. So why do we do this? So first of all, it's really because we want to change the food system. We have a mission of turning it into a circular food system, but it's also because it's really a good business. So right now, if you have 1 ton of BSG, which stands for brewer spent grains, it can cost up to 100 euro to discharge it for a brewer. If they manage to sell it as animal feed, they get approximately 20 euro. If we, however, use our technology and turn it into our super grain flour, we have a revenue of 650 euro. And if we turn it into the crisp I just showed you on the previous slide, it actually has a value of 4,400 euro. And just from 1 ton of spent grain, we can actually produce 2,650 bags of crisp. So it's a fundamental resource or food resource that we need to reintroduce into the food market. How do we do this? So first of all, we have 3 ground pillars. It's technology, innovation, and scalability. So we have a patent pending processing technology, which is a combination of deep industrial technology and hyper IA tools. We work with open innovation, and we do it in collaborations across both academia and business partnerships. And then we do it to scale internationally, and I'll tell you later in a few slides how we want to do this. When we work with industry partners, we work for finding solutions together with partners so they can introduce our flour into existing products in their markets. So we work by where the industry partner develops on their own, but we also work in co-creation processes and also co-creation processes for third-party productions. We are a multi-channel business model. So we have the Grain brand where I showed you the products just before. So here we try to showcase that we can make healthy alternatives to products on the market right now that taste really good and that has a price that the consumer wants to pay. From the brand, we also learn a lot about how to put a narrative on this organic upcycle spent grains in the market, because we think that how to approach the consumers is very important. Then we have Grain Insight. Grain Insight is where we work with our clients and with our customers in introducing how the flour can be used in both crisp and bread and with bagels and etc., all across pastas, etc. So really all the places where you see flour currently being used, we're working on projects and to introduce new products across Europe together with partners. And then in the future, what we would like to build is really an international expanding plan where we can set up local production sites in all the countries across the world where beer is produced and ensure that the grains are upcycled locally. Because brewer spent grain, they have a very short lifetime. It's biological material and it's really 80% moisture. So we need to deal with it locally. So our plan is to expand globally and set up production sites. We think that this way of tackling the food system can really be part of solving the global climate crisis. So first of all, when you use our flour, it uses CO2 than other types of flours. And we already know now when we scale up our production side how we can reduce these measures even further. And of course, then there's the land use. When you use grains that has already been used for brewing or for whiskey production, you save the land fields. So for every kilo of spent grain flour we introduce into the market, we save approximately 2 square meters of land. So this means that for every ton of grains we upcycle, it's actually 400 square meters of land that we save. And this, of course, can have a huge impact when we're using our global planet as we are right now. And then, of course, finally, we can offer the nutrition in terms of proteins and rich products made from these spent grains. The 20% protein that our flour has with full essential amino acid profile is really twice as much as other types of flours and 12 times as much dietary fiber as you would see in other productions. So if we look at this and see, for example, all the spent grains in Denmark, if we upcycle that, we could cover half of the kids here in Denmark in terms of proteins. So it's really a huge potential that we need to see utilized across Europe and across the world. Finally, I just wanted to show you a little bit about how we've been working the last years. We think that speed to market is a key success factor when we work with upcycling. We inaugurated Grain in 2018. We built our production line in 2019, where we really calibrated the technology. And of course, ever since, it's been part of our R&D. We're spending a lot of resources on R&D. In 2020, just as COVID hit, we entered the market, both in B2C and B2B. We are currently now in 385 stores in Denmark, where we've launched the retail brands. And we are across 100 bakeries, and we are going international now. So 2021 has been the year where we're focusing on finding international partners, finding local partners that are interested in suggesting upcycled and organic food to the market. And in 2022, our plan is to scale through joint ventures and licensing. So this was my presentation, and I'm very open for comments and questions.
Great, thank you very much, Karin. That is fascinating and inspiring. And we've got one question through already. How do you deal with the challenges from the EU legislation on waste, byproducts and recycling?
Yeah, so of course it's been a long travel of figuring out exactly how to deal with this, and we are dealing country by country, figuring out exactly how to deal with it. And for that, of course, a lot of really good consultants has been approached and are part of planning how we enter each country. But what's really interesting is that we're working with a side stream. And the side stream actually has, because it's been used for beer production, it's not seen as waste. So we can upcycle it through the right system, through the right processes at the brewery. So for each brewery, we build up a system where we ensure that we keep it in a food safe manner. So it's really about a detailed plan, and we go country by country.
Great, thank you very much for that. So I'm not sure we've got any more questions either in the room or online. So once again, I'm delighted to be able to just ask you. So one thing, the whole theme of circularity, obviously, is growing, rightly so, in interest, and there's so much innovation happening in the kind of field of circularity. How do you what's the process for sharing learnings from what you've experienced with others, and also working the other way? Is there any kind of platform or opportunity for that to happen? So
first of all, I think when you work in a circular food system, we should, like, one of the main learnings that we really had is nothing is really transactional here. So we have very, very close collaborations with our suppliers. So we know every day what our breweries are brewing, what type of grains are in their batches, etc., etc. And we need to have this detailed information. And then working with side streams or in a circular food system, it's really about understanding how you can use variations of incoming resources, huge variations, much more than you would see in a regular food production, because there you can kind of much more claim what type of product are you expecting. But really, we are building an AI model of how to deal with these differences. So right now we deal with more than 90 different incoming brewer spent grain streams, and that is it's highly complex, and it's really something that we use also in a very proactive way. So, for example, from these different types of spent grains, we can very detailed identify. So do we want a flour that has this amount of fiber or this amount of protein with this type of flavor, and what should the color be? And all of this we can only do because we have all the information very detailed from the recipes from the brewers, and then from doing, of course, a lot of analysis on their side streams before engaging with them. So I think relations and then understanding that these incoming streams are highly it's something you really need to invest in when you're building a circular food model. And of course, then in the other way, because we have a totally new category of products, we also work very closely with our buyers, with the bakeries, with the chefs, etc., etc. But they find it also very interesting to work with us, of course, because they can also say, for example, can you make a more dark flour with a little bit more taste of licorice and chocolate than the regular one you have on the market? And then we can try and define such a flour for them and work with that in certain products.
Great. So in terms of new products, what do you foresee as any potential challenges or obstacles that there might be to launching new products in new countries, and how will you think about addressing them?
So first of all, what we're trying to do is to make everyday products. So we don't make something that's very weird. We make something that the consumers already understand. So what we can address the market with is not a totally new product as such, but we call it a flour. We call it granola. We call it crisp. Even though our crisps are much more high in protein and fiber, and they are quite different from other crisps because there's so much fiber in it. But we try to really put our products into categories that the consumers already understand. And then they only need to take the decision of whether they want to decide on a sustainable product, whether they want upcycled, and whether they want organic, because all our products are also organic. And one of the learnings we've had in terms of this is also for the Scandinavian markets, when you talk about organic, or when you talk about sustainable, a lot of we did a huge amount of interviews and consumer studies also before engaging in the market. Sustainability is very much equalized with organic. So we needed to go organic from the beginning. Of course, in the future, we hope we can also upcycle more conventional grains. But I think for many countries across Europe, we will need to start with the organic side streams from the breweries in order to make something that the consumers also understand. Because in the organic part of the market is also where the consumers are already turning towards having a deeper understanding of sustainability. That's at least what we see. So that's also some of our considerations for going international.
Great. Yeah. And I think from a kind of organic principle perspective, it stands to reason that this concept would go hand in hand with using organic as the kind of baseline raw material. I'm also delighted to hear that crisps is one of your products, because I'm a big crisp fan, and now I can try them as part of research without being considered greedy. So we've just got a couple of minutes left. I've got a quite big question for you. It's probably a master's thesis. What do you see the role of governments, businesses, and consumers in helping to scale such a concept up?
So let me first answer by saying that we've had quite a lot of support from government in terms of soft funding. We also see that they are open to working towards legislation. For example, there are certain types of certificates, etc., which we don't fall within because it's not the full grain that we are putting on the market, but only the leftovers, even though it's a super grain, etc., etc. So they're really open-minded, as I see it, the government, and also in terms of soft funding. We see that investors are very open. We are constantly getting approached from investors. They are seeing this as the future. We are seeing certainly industry players are starting to open their eyes. They very much want us to showcase that it's possible. So that's also why we launched the retail brand. As you can probably imagine, it's enough to build a totally new factory and come up with a new category of different flours. But we decided to also launch these retail brands so we could go deeper into also understanding how to launch products with these characteristics. Yeah. So there we hope that industry players will also start saying, okay, let's start just trying the flour, or let's start just introducing one of the products or two of the products or three of them in our line of products, and kind of help this upcycling industry in Europe, because we're definitely behind in Europe. If we compare it to the US, they're ahead of us. And what we really want to do is we believe that this is the future. Yeah, we cannot not save all the food resources that we're currently throwing out. It's insane. So, but we need the big industry players also really to take part of this. And we're really starting to see this, but the first 3 years has been a little bit, they've been a little bit more slow. So there it's been easier to work with the medium-sized companies that has been very focused on sustainability. But we do see an increasing interest, but we would very much like to see more risk-taking from the larger players, because that could really change the whole industry from being, just something tiny that we're currently developing, and really to see the full scale. As you can see, there's huge potential here, and we could cover loads of the proteins and the plant-based proteins needed in Europe just by upcycling spent grains. But it's really, really, really a matter of the full industry and also researchers going into this area. So we haven't seen much research on upcycling. We see very interesting trends in terms of the consumers. We don't have a distribution in terms of how consumers they like or whether they like upcycling. There's really a part of consumers that does not like products that comes from waste, and we need to understand why are they there, why don't they like it, so we can start introducing it into the market and having a better having a greater market.
Great. Well, thank you very much. A really positive, optimistic note to end on. So I'd just like to thank you for a brilliant session, and thank you to the audience for listening as well. And now we are going to go over to Eduardo in Poland to finish up for the day. So over to you, Eduardo.